So this panel is a little bit of an agglomeration of a bunch of different kinds of issues. And I think it's going to be really interesting because we've got a real diverse group of people here. So first of all, why don't we go down the line, just introduce yourselves. Start with you, Jose, and just introduce yourself. Oh, good thinking. Here, you can take that one. Good.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Broward County. My name is Jose Zayas, and I manage the public safety radio system and wireless technologies for Broward County.
Thanks, Jose. Hi, I'm Rich Jimenez from Motorola. I manage the BDA implementation team here in Florida as well as the rest of the Southeast, mainly in the public safety sector.
Hi everyone, my name is Payman Samadi. I'm CEO co-founder of eino.ai. We bring intelligent connectivity for enterprises, governments, and communities.
Hello, my name is Robin Mitchell. I'm the sales engineering manager for iBwave. I have Canis, which is Canada, the US, and South America. I've been in the wireless industry for over 30 years now and been with iBwave for 7 years.
I don't believe it. You don't look like you could have been in the business for 30 years.
Hey everybody, Dan Leaf, co-founder and CEO of Gugli. We're a new technology focused on simple stuff, but critical infrastructure inside a lot of the buildings at the edge. So we heard a lot about the edge. We're focused on making sure that communication stays all the way through, and we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Good. So Jose, we talked on the phone when we prepped for this. You're the guy in Broward County that's involved in making sure that radio system works. And it's interesting that you've got the AHJs that don't report to you, but are integral. You're integral to what they're allowed to do. So tell us what goes on in your world, what your problems are, because these folks are very, very involved in BDAs and frequency and all those things. So talk to us about what your issues and problems are.
So in Broward County, at least my experience, we have, I would say, 3 issues that I'll talk about. One is code, contractors, and new technologies. So part of it is the code. I think a lot of our AHJs interpret the code, what NFPA says, differently. It becomes an issue with us trying to manage expectations in the community. The second item is the contractors, where, finding contractors that are qualified, especially since the BDA world, DAS world, has been, over the last decade kind of growing, and trying to get people who are qualified in understanding RF has been a challenge. And the new technologies that we're, now getting used to in the RF world or two-way communication world, which is, radios that have ability of leveraging Wi-Fi and LTE as well as the LMR system is incredible. I'm pretty excited about that, especially when Mario said earlier about, that individual doesn't care what technology he's riding on. He just needs to make sure that that device works. Nothing is truer in the public safety environment of that police officer and the fire personnel don't really care if they're on the LMR system, the Wi-Fi, or the LTE. They just want it to work. So it's important for us, as these, in our world, public safety, Wi-Fi and LTE are kind of new in the environment, I would say maybe the last 5 years. But how do we work with the broader spectrum of the BDA DAS environment in being able to get more Wi-Fi LTE coverage within a lot of the structures? And one of the stumbling blocks that we run into is legislation, right? So a lot of these things need to be kind of like legislated into, yes, this is what we need to do in the environment.
What you mentioned on our call about off-frequency BDAs and that situation. Are you finding real problems with that? And how can the people in this room help you to make sure that you don't have problems with the system going down because you've got off-frequency stuff that people didn't realize they had?
Well, BDAs, and again, contractors being, installing the BDA correctly is a big, concern of ours, right? We need to make sure we commission those devices properly. the other issue is when one does go rogue, how can we quickly find it? And, trying to troubleshoot where that source is coming from and clearing the issue as quickly as possible. So there's some, right now, I think Comba is one that is really, putting in technology where you can remotely deactivate, VDAs, which is fantastic, but you first have to find where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And we're investing, into solutions, at our tower sites to help us triangulate where interference is coming from.
Good. Gotcha. Thank you. Rich, first of all, I'm a big Motorola fan, have been. I happen to have gone to the same university as the CEO, Greg Brown. And since I met Danny Sanchez, I don't know if he's still here, but, there you go. I'm a big fan in general. What is the play for you, besides all those radios that are all Motorola radios? What is the play for you in public safety at this point, especially in your region down here?
Well, the play for me and my group really is that, we implement BDAs, public safety BDAs, all across the state and the region. And we are an extension of the greater Motorola. So the play for us is really, for BDAs, is to make sure that we're deploying BDAs and that network integrity is maintained. So, that really speaks to Jose's point in terms of finding the right integrator and installer to implement these systems properly. Because there are, like you said, over the last decade, this business has really become very competitive with a lot of small alarm companies or what a lot of people refer to as trunk slammers, just guys that show up with a BDA and expect that they can implement the BDA properly, do the downlink testing and do uplink testing typically, the trunk slammers, they don't do uplink testing. So they're sending out RF energy in the direction of the base station and noising up the entire network. So really, my play is, and I encourage every partner that we deal with. We don't do our own installation. We have our partners do the installation for us. So what we're doing is we're ensuring that they follow the uplink testing procedure as if it was adding another site onto the Motorola network.
Good. So I screwed up. Payman, I should have put you next and Robin first, but I'm going to go to Robin before you and then come back. So Robin, it would be a rare instance when someone's doing design in the business and they're not using iBwave. There are other folks, but it's generally speaking, you guys do a lot of the design work. And are there more elements to the business, and is the design the only thing from a public safety standpoint that you guys are really involved in?
So that's a great question. We're actually involved in multiple areas besides the design. One of the areas that you want to consider pre-design is doing a survey. A lot of the HJs require grid testing and validating the design, taking a survey of the venue. It's better if you have the design floor plans ahead of time, which is always the bottleneck. Getting those floor plans, so building owners, that's key for a great design, having up-to-date quality floor plans, preferably an AutoCAD drawing. But if you have to punt, you can go with a JPEG image or a photo of a fire escape route, which is bare minimum. But being able to take that design and scale it and do a survey of the venue, not just a grid test, but doing a survey of the location, making sure that you have coverage, you survey around the building, make sure you understand what the macro environment is doing, not just the public safety network, but also the carrier network is doing, and then do the survey inside the building to do a comparative analysis to see how much of that signal is penetrating inside the building. So that survey helps augment or enhance the design for that in-building design. Now you can do a design with the predictive analysis from the macro environment, the public safety network, and the in-building system. One of the key pieces that's usually missing is how much of that in-building system is leaking outside the building. How much of that in-building system is impacting the macro environment, which could greatly impact the public safety broadcast system. You can actually take down a network by turning up a BDA and you've already did not do proper isolation testing before keying it up. But you can actually determine that in the design before you actually do that piece of it, just so you don't have to change antenna locations on the in-building system after they've been installed. You can verify that before it's installed during the design phase.
Good.
Yeah.
So Payman, you must have been listening with all four ears when Joe Bacuzzi was up here talking, because this is really kind of your area with converged networks and all that. So tell us what eino does. There's probably not a lot of people in the room that are aware of your company. I did hear from Charlie, a number of people do know you, but this is kind of an interesting concept that you're doing. Tell us about what eino is doing.
Sure. I'll start by telling what problem we are basically solving. So, here we're talking about public safety in more technical term, but if you think about it, connectivity is kind of our public safety. From our commercial and residential real estate, that we have our security system, we have our IoT and HVAC system that requires to our connectivity, and if it doesn't work, basically we're going to have safety issues, all the way when we go to the enterprises and manufacturing facilities and warehouses, that we have quality control cameras. Recently we have AGVs, we have remote control devices, and we're going to enter to the smart city, that you're going to have self-driving cars everywhere. And these all require connectivity, and if they don't work, basically it's going to impact our lives. So on the application side, we see, as we saw in the presentation, there's a very high pace in that new applications are coming, especially with AI. Everything's going to be automated. It's going to be much faster in terms of physical AI entering, that we could have humans and robots interacting with each other, or many robots interacting with each other at the same time. So anything that connects to a network is changing very fast. The networks itself are changing, but it may not be as fast. But when we look at the workflows, in the way that we design and build and run the networks, it has barely changed in the past 10, 15 years. We use the exact same workflows, tools, methods that we were using 10 years ago to go and build these types of networks. Either it's a DAS network, if it's a Wi-Fi network, if it's basically public safety, and we're trying to do it the same way. And that means there's a big gap with what the market needs in terms of the speed, that how fast we are able to provide those connectivities, and how we basically performing there. And everyone's talking about competition and how margins are, and we need to basically improve that efficiency that we have in our systems, and that's where
what
we
part
come
of it
in.
are you? What issue are you solving? We know those things. What are the issues you're
Yeah,
solving?
our platform enters and basically tries to introduce this new concept of intelligent connectivity. There are a few aspects about that. One is that you need one tool for every phase, for the entire phase that you have. So before you get to the design, be able to very quickly provide those proposals and codes. You'll be able to do it on our platform. Once you design and you do your verification, you'll be able to do it on the same platform. And then once you get to the next step, that you want to monitor and manage the network, you'll be able to do it on the same platform. Also, we have introduced this concept of 3D digital twin that could be built very easily in a very affordable way from the very first moment. So when you start a new project, quickly be able to create a 3D model, indoor and outdoor, and from there, use AI to be able to have your workflow.
Yeah, cool. So Dan, you're next on the list. Could you just pass? Thank you. Yeah. So you don't have much going on these days, I bet, huh? Nothing really interesting.
No,
happening
not at all.
Gugli. So tell us about Gugli. You're basically in the monitoring segment of the business. Am I correct with that, or is there more to it?
Yeah, there's a little more to it. So everybody kind of teed this up for me well, specific to codes, adoption, where it's getting adopted and interpreted across county lines. From there to the efficiencies of deploying people out to the field to correct or install. What Gugli's done is we've kind of tweaked that a little bit. So I spent my last company building thousands of these public safety and commercial systems across the country. And I took away a lot of inefficiencies from those deployments. Couldn't get a TCO until it was passed. Everything would stop until that day happened, and then you could move people in and it was almost forgot about. So we created some technology from the front end all the way through the end. Can we take these permit systems that are identifying code, have AI start to review those, put them through a blockchain so we can watch that method go through the process, and then deploy a system out there that monitors these networks all the way to the edge. So when you go out and test these systems outside the IT closet in the MPO, or the head end, coverage has to be tested all the way to the edge. But then you're alarming these things only at the active component. And we see a problem with that. Someone goes up on the roof and tweaks the donor antenna, coverage is degraded at the inside the building and no one knows until that 1 year anniversary. Come around and they say, hey, when did this happen? We don't know. Sometime in the last year. How did it break? Who knows? So what Gugli's doing is really pushing that envelope of saying, okay, we can teach AI of the thousands of permits and low voltage life safety systems, understand the fail-safe and what are the nuances of those, point them to a specific code to a jurisdiction that requires this. We deploy these systems, they're signed off. Now we can monitor these 24/7, 365 for less than what they're paying to check it annually 1 day a year. So we envision that these systems should be compliant 24/7, remove the risk and the compliance issues at the real estate level, because if I'm not mistaken, these things have to work 24/7 even though they're checked once a year. So what Gugli is bringing these systems to give insight and action, instant data to the technician to go out there and see right where the problem falls, at the jurisdiction to see if noise levels are at the donor antenna to quickly turn them off or if signal degraded. And that's what we're focused on kind of from end to end.
Right, so all of us who are in the business have gone out to a site and realized the antennas in some sector are dead, have been dead for a long time, nobody noticed, and all of a sudden it's, oh yeah, somebody complained it's not working well. Is this a solution for that, or is this a Band-Aid for that?
It's a solution. So a good example, we're deploying a high-rise in New York right now, and a technician spent about 7 hours chasing out an issue with an antenna, and come to find out behind the sheetrock it was pinched, but they thought it was cable connectors. So we want to be able to point to the issue, and we want to be able to go find that issue right away. For the efficiency, I heard that a lot up here in the prior panel, is we got to create the capability of efficiencies. Send a technician there, and it all goes back to the contractor too. It derails your schedule if you got to go do a quick, is it minor, major, critical, back to the jurisdiction, understanding that. But really what we're doing is being able to pinpoint that exact issue and then being able to act on it.
Gotcha. So Jose, does this sound like something that would be interesting in your world, to have this knowledge, at your fingertips and be able to monitor that yourself?
Absolutely. That would be fantastic. Knowing that there is a problem, where it is and how quickly we can resolve it is, paramount to what it is that we do.
Right.
It's finding the issue and reconciling the issue as quickly as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
So Rich, from the standpoint of Motorola and the installation that you're doing, you're looking for partners, correct, to do installation work and some of that other work.
That's correct.
How do these people fit into that scheme in terms of working with Motorola?
Well, there are a lot of partners out here, right here now, that we've either worked with or in the process of working with. Motorola, is a big player in the public safety space, and there are a lot of organizations are very interested in partnering with us, and it really we can leverage the entire. We're trying to grow this BDA business within Motorola, and we leverage our partners to do exactly that. So any of the partners that are out there that are qualified, we're looking at like NICET 1, 2, or 3. Typically, we'd like to see 3 and some NICET design qualifications if you have them. So I'm looking for partners all the time.
Good. So before we go on, I just want to say we have some late entrants that came here. A dear friend of mine, Clayton Funk, from Signal Strength Advisors and his team. If those of you that are here, again, we try to be as broad as we can in terms of introductions and things, but they are bankers and they're here because there's interest from their standpoint in what we are all doing. So, avail yourself of chatting with Clayton and his team. And I hope that there is more opportunity for all of us to be dating each other in the room from the issues that come up that you want every day. Also, being able to get work from some of the folks on the panel. Go ahead.
Rich, may I add something to what Dan said? I know of your equipment and what it does, and with your equipment as well as what Motorola is doing with BDAs in the field with remote access and remote control of BDAs, we will know, because the network reporting back to our network operations center, we'll be able to tell long before the people that are actually occupying those buildings that there's something wrong with the system. And if we incorporated your technology with our remote remote monitoring, we'd be able to drill even further down into what that issue actually is, long ahead of any complaints actually getting back to the building owner.
I think the In-Building Wireless Association needs to be commission-based from here, right?
But that creates life safety, right? That
Absolutely.
makes sure that when the emergency happens, we're not wondering if it's working or not. And
That's
you can
right.
look at instances long prior to this, but yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree.
Yeah. So, Robin, back to you. Your situation is based on seats, and many of the people here are seat holders for iBwave. So, how does that work in terms of the sort of the next generation of what we're looking at in the future? Is it all going to be seat-based for you forever, or are there going to be other things that will be available to people on the iBwave scene?
Excellent question. I think this ties into the discussion about monitoring and maintenance and that aspect of it. Because of the advent of digital twin and trying to automate finding out those issues, the linchpin is going to be the design. Even though you may have alarm taking place at a venue, you may know what the offending equipment may be, but locating where that equipment is, locating where the cable route or the connectors are, is a part of that design. And so being able to see that remotely from a desktop view as you tie into those layers, not only remotely, but when you send a technician out to go out and troubleshoot or address that issue, being able to go with that digital twin on their mobile device and quickly find that based on that digital twin, quickly locating the offending equipment and being able to quickly replace it. This is one thing to know what it is. It's another thing to go out with the adequate equipment to replace or repair it.
Isn't it easier just to rip all the sheetrock down and start again?
No, nobody wants to do that.
No, okay. Just checking. So, Payman, you're sort of working in connecting all the different dots that are all over the place. And so, how does your software, your platform, I should say, your platform, bring us together sort of in a Joe Bacuzzi sort of world? And how does that help us to be more efficient in the public safety area, to be more efficient in cost savings? How does that all work in your world?
What we have seen is that any environment you go now, you have multiple types of networks. There is Wi-Fi, there is public safety, there is DAS, and now private cellular neutral hosts in many places. And people start using different tools for designing those networks, different teams for managing those networks, and this is introducing a lot of inefficiencies. What we thought was that let's create a 3D digital twin first, and then any sort of wireless network that we have, doesn't matter what's the technology, what's the band, what's the frequency. Sometimes you have fixed wireless at millimeter wave. You'll be able to have them all in one place, make the same assumption on what is the physical environment that we have, what type of clutter we have, so we don't make different assumptions for different types of networks, and be able to unify them in one place. One problem we have seen is that when a new opportunity comes for the companies that build networks is there's a new building, they want to figure out how much it's going to cost to build that, how the design looks like. It takes a very long time to provide that code. They have two options. One is do like a rule of thumb and say square footage divided by a certain number and provide that, or they need to go do a detailed design which takes weeks sometimes to do it. And they haven't even won that contract first yet, so it's a waste of money if they do that. Our platform could automate that process, and within minutes, you'd be able to have your design ready for you. You could see a 3D model. You could see how exactly your radios, APs are there, how's your heat maps going to look like. And this would really help you both internally to have accurate models there, but also when you communicate to your end user, to a customer, and say, I'm going to charge you this amount of dollars, you could show them why you're charging them, why exactly this is a unique environment, and how you could adapt your capabilities to address that.
So how many people in this room have done a design on a project you didn't win? Okay, enough said. So let's go back to Jose. Jose, from the standpoint of your job and an AHJ in Broward County or Fort Lauderdale, how does that relationship work? Who's in charge of whom?
Yikes. So,
I didn't realize it was that hard a question. Sorry.
well, there's a lot of politics in Broward County.
I understand.
The FCC sees it as the FCC AHJ or license holder is the one who's ultimately responsible on whether a BDA gets activated or not. So we here in Broward County have done and have gone through great measures to ensure that we have excellent relationships with our fire AHJs, in addition to even some of the contractors, right? Making sure that they're providing the correct information. You know, I have a great staff that's standing in the back judging me right now. With regards to that, they absolutely, spend a lot of time in making sure that we get the information that we need and that it is code compliant to the best of our ability, right? But the networking and the relationship building has to happen organically. There are some segments that doesn't work out as well, but, we tend to try to work as cooperatively as possible within our areas of responsibility. So my main interest typically is, protecting the infrastructure, right? I don't want to see just BDAs going popping up all over the place because, someone says, hey, a BDA is needed. We need to do our due diligence to make sure that it is needed. And, once that's confirmed and validated, then we can move forward in the process. But, definitely networking, knowing who to talk to, knowing who the players are in the environment is paramount to successful implementation.
I'm thrilled to have you as a connection, and you're doing a great job down here from what I can tell with the system, so thank you. Rich, here's a curve.
Okay.
What constitutes a good contractor for you?
Maybe I should answer.
Who's asking the questions here?
A good contractor is one that would be responsible for everything they do, totally transparent with their process, and proactively working with their design and their field folks to make sure that the system is going in accordance with what the local code requires.
Gotcha. So let's go back to Jose. Jose, what constitutes a good contractor? You teed it up for me. Go ahead.
So, a good contractor for us is, someone who, number one, understands our guidelines, takes the time to really know the code and the environment of where there is that they're going to. But it's also, being, prepared. Definitely the, certifications help, but it's also collaborating with us. And when there's deficiencies that instead of being argumentative, obviously, we go out, we justify and validate the issues, why we're saying it, and that, we can move forward from that. So a lot of it is the technical competency. As it was mentioned before, we have a lot of, fire alarm folks that they do great with fire alarming and stuff like that. But when it comes to the RF environment and interfacing that to a public safety network, they don't really understand the RF portion of it, which is paramount to what it is that we do.
Yeah, gotcha. So, Robin, is there a difference between a good design on an iBwave seat and a bad design? Or is there variation?
Yeah, usually it's pretty obvious because what we try to do is create alerts and alarms that help you quickly decide whether or not it is meeting those KPIs based on the NFP or IFC requirements that the AHJs look for. And we'll give you a legend so you can see whether you pass or fail very, very quickly. If there are other mitigating issues, that alarms or warnings that show up at the bottom of that design, and you'll quickly see, oh, wow, why are there so many warnings in this design? What's wrong with this thing? So there may be some mismatched components, splitters and connectors and things that are not connected properly. So you'll see those alerts very quickly. So it'll be easily identifiable whether or not it's a good design or a bad design.
Yeah, gotcha. So, Dan, were there some announcements that you've made about penetration in your systems and people that are using this that we should know about? Or are there things that are coming that you can't discuss at this point in time? Where are you with that?
Yeah, so we've got a few large jurisdictions in the market getting ready to launch their 27 mandate. The 27 code's coming out that gives a little more control over the donor, the noise levels, and even at the monitoring piece of it. So we are actually deploying systems now in one of the largest AHJs, big high rises. The focus there is to come in and see a digital display of that building to give quick access to the firemen or whoever's on site, see that issue, what floor it's on, be able to make decisions based off that digital display, but also come through the cloud and into their NOC to isolate what what trouble they want to see through the fire panel, outside the fire panel. So we're deploying that now, and we're going to have some fun stuff to announce here in a couple months. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is, the word monitoring, I think, has been around a long time, but not the way we think about it. Monitoring is the active component, maybe 7 alarm points at your fire panel. Maybe your remotes are monitored, but beyond that, nothing is. But yet the coverage is so specific. So we're doing a lot of stuff there to kind of drive that message. But ultimately, between the AI and the front end, to make sure that these codes are picked up correctly and not interpreted incorrectly, all the way through the design and deployment, that should match with whether the iBwave's doing or these designs and what the contractors are doing.
See, sounds like you got a couple of guys on the panel that are, interested in what you're doing.
I'd
So
love to talk, because I
That's
think, and my last point to drive that home is the efficiencies, because it's going to give the efficiencies to not only the jurisdiction and the licensee and the control over their networks, but also from the contractors. So we're really, everybody sees these new bells and whistles come out for properties. They just see dollars. What's it's going to add? What's it's going to cost? We can actually drive the cost down because we can catch systems that are starting to fail and degrade before they're catastrophic is what we'll use. And so you can start to see, and then
And
even the
reduce the
contractor
maintenance
level.
costs as well.
What's that?
And reduce the maintenance cost as
Reduce the
well.
maintenance cost, catch something before the property has a surprise bill, and the efficiencies to the contractor to be able to judge and when they need to go out to a site, whether it's important or not.
gotcha. So let's take some questions from the floor. Please, Steve.
Got a question for Dan. I'm very interested in what you're talking about. When you're putting that model together to monitor the system, how are you capturing that data? Is it from an as-built engineering drawing? Are you walking the entire site and making sure that you know exactly how every cable is routed through the building, what the splitters are, the serial numbers for the splitters? How are you capturing that level of detail so that you know that this could be potentially somebody installed a light and they put a nail, it's screwed right here where this cable's gone. I know exactly what's going on. How is that all working?
So this goes to the first 2 points, a correct design and a correct contractor. So when they're designing these, we're not doing anything with the design, the functionality of the system. If they're deployed correctly, designed correctly, they're going to function correctly. We're putting our devices at the edge. So every antenna, 1-to-1 ratio, all the way going back to the MPO or the head endpoint, and we're collecting that. So we take a benchmark of that system. So the CW tests have already done, the PIM testing is already completed, the cable sweeps are done. All those are within the parameters of them functioning as the manufacturer wanted it to. We catch that benchmark. And so now our edge is pushing that back through to our device and our gateway that can see anything down to a half dB of degradation. Nail through it, someone knocks an antenna off, still functioning, but it lost 5 dB, whatever it could be. But then we're taking that network and then we're doing a pulse. Some jurisdictions are having us do 90 seconds. Hospital environment wants it in less. Commercial office wants it in more. And it comes down to data rates. But what we're doing is taking that pulse, and if we see 2 pulse of a red, then we can alert and give notification through an app on your phone that tells you exactly what's going on with it.
So that system will be able to distinguish whether you've got a problem at jumper level or you've got a problem in the main cable.
Correct.
And can it actually pinpoint an area where you think you're getting maybe some PIM because you got a nail through there or something, or how does that work?
You'll know it at that last leg. So as you branch off to a coupler splitter to an antenna and farther down that line, if it's good here and that last antenna is not, we can see that degradation happen at that path. And then you go back to our as-built on our files, pull it up, technician can see it right away and know that route's through there.
Impressive. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just for Jose. In the days of Greenfield and going out and doing BDAs, you had a very heavy hammer, right? You couldn't get an occupancy license if you didn't pass the test. Now you're going after brownfield. Number one, how are you educating these brownfield buildings that they need to have these type of systems? And what's your hammer for enforcement with that?
Well, in my position, I'm not in enforcement, right? The enforcement comes from the fire AHJs. So they're the ones that are really going out in the field and looking at these buildings. And again, Broward County has 32 municipalities. 18 different fire agencies or something like that. So they're the ones that are, determining how aggressively they're going to go after, buildings that are in existence and, how they're going to enforce the BDAs. We get involved when it's like they identify, hey, a BDA is needed, and then we go ahead and validate that. It has to come through our office because a lot of these agencies leverage the county's radio system. So as the FCC AHJ, that's where we get involved.
So I'm a brownfield property owner, I'm not in compliance, what's my motivation to become in compliance?
The motivation will be how aggressively is that fire agency going to come after you and cite you and, penalize you, for not being in compliance. And that's not something that I do. Broward County, our public safety radio system. We don't have enforcement, unfortunately. I wish I did. That would help.
How bad do you want to have that system go on? Good. More questions? Anyone? Good. Well, thank you all for being on this panel. That was terrific. Thank you. So, we're committed to figuring ways to get business for all of the people that attend, the sponsors, the people on the panel. So, that's why we're here. So thank you all. Appreciate it. John? Good. Thank you. Good job.